tigonjetse vuto pinimbira tieni tigonjetse vuto pinimbira tieni tigonjetse vuto pinimbira tieni tigonjetse vuto pinimbira tieni tigonjetse vuto pinimbira ndati kuthetselana vuto pinimbira ndati kuthetselana vuto pinimbira. 1000 special days. Awa ndi masiku oyambirira chikwi chimodzi moyo wa mwana, kuyambira pamene mayi ayima kufikira mwana wobadwayo atakwanitsa zaka ziwiri. Mwana amene sanadye chakudya choyenera nthawiyi amakhala wopinimbira moyo wake wonse. Izi zimabwezera mbuyo kuthekera kwa mwanayo pa ntchito zosiyanasiyana monga maphunziro, masewera, kagwiridwe ka ntchito zamanja, zimene zimabwezeretsa mbuyo kutukuka kwa dziko. Tiyeni tigonjetse vuto pinimbira, 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 tiyeni tigonjetse vuto pinimbira. Ndati kuthetselana vuto pinimbira, ndati kuthetselana vuto pinimbira.
Mayi amene akukonzekera kukhala ndi pakati akuyenera kudya zakudya zakasintha-sintha kuti akhale ndi moyo wathanzi, komanso mwana odzabadwayo adzakhale wathanzi. Amayi oyembekezera adye zakudya zopatsa thanzi zochokera m'magulu onse asanu ndi limodzi azakudya zomwe zimapezeka kudera lawo tsiku ndi tsiku. Zakudya monga izi: gulu la zanyemba, nandolo khobwe, gulu la zanyama, ziwala mbewa, gulu la zamafuta, mapeya mtedza, gulu la zipatso, nthochi mango, gulu la zamasamba, kholowa denje bonongwe, gulu la zokhutitsa, mbatata achimanga. Mwana akangobadwa ayamwe mwakathithi kufikira miyezi isanu ndi umodzi.
Vuto pinimbira, tiyeni tigonjetse 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 vuto pinimbira. Ndati kuthetselana vuto pinimbira, ndati kuthetselana vuto pinimbira.
Stunting is a problem which is caused by malnutrition, but it is a problem which can be solved. So pano ndifuna kuti anthu zonse kuno ku Malawi akudziwa programs zimenewa 1000 special days. Tiyeni tigonjetsa vuto lopinimbira. Koma chichewa is difficult for azungu. Mama, koma pepani azungu akuzungulira mutu eti. Koma tiyeni tigonjetse vuto lopinimbira. Zikomoni.
Muno Malawi pa ana obadwa 100 aliwonse 47 mwa iwo amapezeka ndi vuto lopinimbira.
Good morning. May I please ask you to take a seat? The session is about to begin. If you could fill in the front rows in this section, it would be helpful. We were supposed to have a round table, but this is probably as round as we can get. So kindly come forward. Please. Good morning. Just to reaffirm that you are in the right session, this is a round table on the contribution of science in the Sun movement. Welcome. I would like to first bring you back to yesterday at the opening session. At the end of the opening, we were asked by group representing different stakeholders to stand up. And if you noticed, I came from the academia as well. We were possibly the last and being put under others, those who have an interest to contribute to the Sun. It reaffirms the need why we are here to talk about a positioning and role that scientists, academia, and professionals in nutrition and related fields can contribute to the Sun movement. What do we expect from today? You are in the first session of the global gathering that discuss openly the issues of how nutrition scientists, academias, and professionals are currently involved in efforts to scale up nutrition in countries. We also want to hear from you what are the opportunities to intensify their involvement, the gaps, and what more needs to be done. I would like to give, in the beginning, a short introduction about these issues. In the beginning of November, the 16th series of teleconference calls with all the Sun countries took place. And the theme was on the contribution of science to the Sun movement. So it really leads us right on to where we are now. They were asked to address 4 questions. 1, existing input of nutrition scientists, academia, and professionals into multi-stakeholder platform, the challenges encountered, whether the new mechanisms are needed to leverage scientific evidence and capacity to scale up nutrition interventions, and what are the top 3 actions needed to create an enabling environment to strengthen nutrition science, academia, and professional support for scaling up nutrition. All the countries have done their homework. They were so comprehensive, thoughtful. Here are the summary of their points. Most countries have multi-stakeholder platforms already where the academias are involved. But mainly, the support seems to be done on an ad hoc basis. So if you need, you ask, they deliver. So it's task-based. Second, most of the countries feel that they already have a critical mass of academics and professionals in countries. And that's a plus. We want to be able to say that we have a pool of professionals and group that could possibly be strengthened further. The challenge that the countries felt, this is very important, and I would like to be able to hear from you, how do you think these can be encountered? The first challenge was the effective communication of information. It looks like policymakers and scientists and academia needs to develop a common language where they could speak together and understand where the other comes from. Those who produce research need to translate and communicate in a format that speaks to policymakers, like a policy brief. That's an example being provided. The users of research also need to be able to articulate what do they need the research community to do. This reminds me of a scenario where you build a bridge from two different sides of the river. In the middle, it meets each other. And there, we want to be able to bridge that gap. The second challenge, how to align the agenda of policymakers and academia. The academia focus on publications and obtaining a degree and professional career. While the research meet that higher standard, lots of time the scope of the research is too narrow to be of use for stakeholders and decision making. Also, budget line for nutrition research is needed, so decision maker can commission research and the donor community to align itself more with country research priorities. Different timetable. So you talk about that. Researcher do research for the knowledge of tomorrow, because it takes time. Policymakers would like the knowledge of today, because they can't wait 5, 10 years down the road. Things may change. They may not be there. So we are talking about different time frame. There's a general feeling that more can be done. Communication, networking with the science community and between them and decision makers to develop more formalized approach or framework for research that involves a broad section of stakeholders in the country, and also to compile available evidence on nutrition accessible to decision makers. We are now going to more and more start a conversation and dialogue between these two groups, and today is an opportunity not to be missed. It was a great pleasure for me to be able to introduce to you the 4 panelists who will represent two sides, country voices, and also the academias and professionals in the country. They will provide us with some issues that will continue to be discussed. After the panelists, I will open the floor for more comments. Please bear in mind that because we only have a limited time, to please be concise and to the point. Let me start off with the country voices. And there's a reason for it. We have to understand the background needs and the country context before we are able to say what we can do to help. So let me begin by starting with Vandana Krishna from the Maharashtra Health and Nutrition Mission in India and Sun Focal Point. She will be responding to how the science community contribute to nutrition in Maharashtra and what is needed and what more could be done. Vandana, the floor is yours. Speak from here.
Thank you very much for, firstly, for accepting Maharashtra into the Sun movement, because we are not a country, but we are a large state in India with a population of 100 million. So that's a large state. And we have the children which we deal with in our Department of Women and Child number about 6 million in the age group of 0 to 6 years. And about 28% children are stunted in our state of Maharashtra. So it's a large problem, and we set up a mission in Maharashtra for tackling malnutrition. I'm from the government. I'm an administrator, basically. But I work in the mission, which tries to act as a bridge between not only academia and the government and policymakers, but other stakeholders as well. So that's the role of our mission, and probably that is one of the foremost strategies of our state to address this issue of multi-stakeholders and how we bring them together. So far as academia is concerned, we do find that there is a gap. As you mentioned, there is a problem of evolving a common language. And how do we bring academia and policymakers together? How do we communicate? The other day I was in a meeting in the Government of India, and we have a new government at the center, and the Minister of Women and Child Development is very keen to address malnutrition. So it's very high on the political agenda. But she very clearly told us in this seminar that I don't understand what you say. The room was full of academicians, nutrition experts, and she says that I need it to be put in a very simple language. I need a 2-page brief. Please tell me what needs to be done. I don't have the patience to sit through your seminars and to read your papers. So she said it very frankly, and but she means business. She's very serious about it, but she needs this gap to be bridged. So definitely, this is a big issue, and we in the mission try to bridge that gap, because I, being from the government, understand the government's language, and I try to translate the technicalities into very simple language which the government can pick up and incorporate in policy. So far as research in nutrition is concerned, I would say that it is of a questionable quality. The content is a bit cut off from the ground realities. Still, there's an orientation towards publication of publications rather than making it more relevant for the community. We do have some very good organizations within the academia too. We have, for example, some organizations which did a survey in 2012 for us, and to assess the extent of the stunting and wasting and undernutrition. But we do need much more such surveys. We did not have district level surveys or block level surveys. This was a very wide divisional level survey which can give us some data about broad comparison between larger areas, but not really what interests the government, which is much smaller level, block level data. So we do have now some organizations which are working with the government in such research and nutritional surveys too. At the Government of India level, we have now some action groups headed by very renowned persons from academia, All India Institute of Medical Sciences and so on. But as I said, there is indeed a problem that so far research has not necessarily influenced policy to that extent. And there is a certain disconnect which we are now trying to bridge this gap. There is also very limited funding in nutrition research in India. There is much more research happening in agriculture, but not so much in nutrition. Also, I must say that from the angle of the policy makers, there is a certain unwillingness to engage very closely with academia, which again we are trying to bridge this kind of gap. There is a certain problem of attitude. So there are issues of interpersonal communication too. I think it's a very big issue in my view that we have to sort of dumb down nutrition when we have to speak to policymakers. This is my personal view, because I come from the government and I understand my peers and my colleagues. And there is a certain impatience in government to deal with a lot of technicalities, especially in this area of nutrition. Um, just to mention very briefly that we are also working with various other organizations, and more we find partners. For example, we have entered into a partnership with the Indian Institute of Technology. They are helping us in various ways, including in crops and agriculture and so on. We are working with the University of Medical Sciences. They are helping us to change the medical curriculum, the curriculum of the nursing academies. In fact, surprisingly, nutrition was never included in the curriculum of for doctors, the undergraduate curriculum, to that extent, in depth. And doctors themselves were not really attuned to nutrition. There are still doctors who do not understand the importance of exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months. There are pediatricians who would recommend infant formula even today, and there are mothers therefore who get influenced by their doctors and do not believe the field level functionaries whom we train. So we are trying to address this issue by not only in-service training programs for doctors who are already in service, as well as pre-service training in the sense of changing the medical curriculum. So we are working with academia, we are working with the universities and so on. Things are moving in India. Thank you.
The next panelist, thank you, Vandana, for that. Starting off, it's very important to hear. And the next panelist, I'm so pleased to invite Daisy Marquez, Executive Director of CONASAN in El Salvador, to address her experience about the science community contribution and also what is needed. She will be speaking in Spanish, so for those of you, you would need translation.
Bueno, muy buenos días.
Good morning to all of you. It's a great pleasure for me to be here with you today, and I should like to thank the organizers of this conference for extending this invitation to me. It is a great pleasure. In El Salvador, we work for nutrition, and the academic sector is one of the sectors, one of the areas which has now joined the multi-sectorial platform with which we have been working, and we started back in the year 2012. In our platform, we work with the government, the civil society, the people who cooperate, and of course the academic sector, which has just joined us, as I have said. And we certainly hope in the future to be able to join hands with the private sector. We believe that the scientific and academic sectors can contribute very much to attain the objectives set out for nutrition in my country, where we have a twofold problem. We have a problem of deficit, and we're trying to work against chronic malnutrition and anemia and so on. And on the other hand, we have quite an increase of the number of people that are obese, and the obesity, of course, does have very negative results on people's health. In El Salvador, we have the National Council for Nutrition, and the Minister of Health and Agriculture and 2 secretariats of the presidency work on this, and we also have an executive office for which I'm responsible, and we work along hand in hand with this multi-sectorial platform. And we believe that the scientific and academic sectors may contribute very much to our efforts. And I share what the previous speaker has said, because the academic and scientific sectors have a view a vision which may be very different from the politicians, for example, or the people that actually do the job from the point of view of nutrition. And we are working on all these things now today. And of course, the decision makers are fundamental because we believe that for us to be able to contribute to solve the problem and to take practical decisions for us, it's fundamental for us to have a common vision of all these problems. And we can only have this common vision. We have to base it on three fundamental points. On one hand, we have to have as many decision makers, people taking political decisions, and the people actually doing the job. We have to decide on the importance of of nutrition in human development. We have to answer this, the social and economic development of each and every country. This is what we have to deal with. And we have to have a joint vision and define the nature of the problem and how things can be solved, because we have seen so many countries, because on the many countries we have the problem of the deficit, and then on the other hand you have the problem of obesity, sometimes in the very same family. So we have to really know what nutrition, what must be like if we want to be able to deal with malnutrition. And we have to be fully aware of the importance of the participation of the various stakeholders here in trying to solve the problem. And the possible way, the best way to attain our objective is to work together to be stronger in each and every sector so that we be able to make some headway in attaining our objectives. And I think it is very important to be able to define the path we want to tread and define the objectives we want to attain. In El Salvador, we have developed our work along these lines, but we have set our path according to a strategic plan which we have formulated on the basis of the whole country, not simply a government program which will last during the period of one single government, but something which will be long-lasting. We're not looking only at objectives for tomorrow, but we have a vision which is a midterm, a long-term vision. And we're thinking in terms of 5 years, 10 years, and even more. And we have built this vision of ours with all the various sectors involved and the universities. And last year, we had a meeting with the various universities in our country. And we have had full participation. And we have seen that often the academic and the scientific world were worried because sometimes governments did not take into account what they were asking for. But now I think we have a rather positive approach. We are aware of the problem, all the terms of the problem, and what needs to be done in order to have contribution from every sector in this. And after this first meeting we were able to have a proper dialogue. We listened to one another, and we were told that, for example, we need to be able to contribute to this or to that, and this can come from each and every university, taking into account of the various needs. So we have a common vision now. They have also offered to join this fight for better nutrition and to use all the professional people that are available to work in this, and thus have a true cooperation. And today we believe that they have very much to contribute. First of all, inform all the people what is needed in the country so that we make a better impact on nutrition through educational methodologies, which will be able to help us because we're dealing now with people that have a low level of education, and it is very difficult to change their attitudes, their practices from the point of view of feeding and health and so on. And it is important to define very well how we can improve nutrition in these very vulnerable groups and what sort of nutrition is needed. And I believe they can therefore contribute very much to all these efforts of ours, because what is fundamental is to have a common vision and a dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for both of you. I think it's important to have this attitude of opening for communication. That has to be a start of things. Both of you are so passionate about what you're doing. That's important. So now we will turn to the academia, and I want to give the floor now to Richmond Ariete from University of Ghana. What is your experience?
Thank you. So I'd like to talk about what we have been doing as the academic platform for SUN in Ghana. As a group, we have been together since 2013, contributing as a recognized group with SUN. But we have been engaged with the SUN process even much earlier, since 2011, when Ghana became part of SUN. And the way that we have been engaged and where we thought the academia could really play a role was with the civil society organization. So that's where we really started and engaged with. But over time, we realized that there were some unique strengths that we bring to SUN, which within the setup for the civil society probably was not a good fit for us. So in 2013, we came out. But one of the ways in which we have been contributing since 2011 has been as part of what we have a cross-sectoral planning group at the national level which coordinates nutrition actions. And we are involved in contributing to policy, to planning, and to coordination. And in 2013, we realized that one of our main strengths, as has already been indicated, is generating evidence to support the SUN actions at the country level. And we looked at this in two ways. There's a need to generate the long-term kind of basic knowledge to drive nutrition. But we also thought that there was also the need to generate the kind of learning of experiences as we evolve the different groups that are coming together on the cross-sectoral platform to work together. And we realized that this kind of learning was not being documented in the other sectors. And we felt that we could do that in a very good way. One of the ways we have sought to do that is to identify a number of areas in which we would provide information, not in the way that academics are known to typically provide it in journal articles, but also to try and put it in simple language. And there are two areas that we focused on. One was on looking at the financing situation for nutrition in Ghana. And this morning we've heard a lot about that. It's a big challenge. We wanted to break it down and look at how does the financing situation work. So we got together and did some analysis with the government's budget and looked at where are the Ghanaian cedis being spent regarding the way government's policy is being put out. Another area we looked at was in capacity. There's a few studies that have come out this year and a few of them earlier, showing that in many of the countries which are struggling to deal with sun, there are also huge capacity deficits. And so we're able to do this analysis with, without any funding, but looking at what already exists in the literature and trying to put them together and then make that available to the country to be able to use that. We had a good opportunity this year as part of an international conference that Ghana hosted, and we were able to present this information for all the actors to be able to be aware of it. Of course, as academics, we can't run away from publication, so we are lucky to be having it published as part of the Nutrition Society proceedings. But we think that this is a good opportunity to be able to look at different aspects of what is happening, learn from that, and then use that to help the country effort. We came to this process with a very small number of people in mind, because we thought that if we started big, academics, we are very busy and we have all these activities to do, but we realized that if we started small, engage a few people who are dedicated, without any funding, we've been able to operate within this past year. And we think that it's a good learning experience for us, because we can actually contribute in a small way, but in a way that will really affect what is going on at the country level. One thing I'd like to say in addition is that academics have resources that are not monetary, but exist in abundance. We have students who are available, and we can use their time to be able to contribute to what is happening at the country level. And that's one of the things that we look forward to doing. And we've come up with a list of things that we have planned to do. As I've said, this is actually the very beginning. We are in the infancy stage, but we are hoping to be able to then use existing information to be able to inform what is going on at the country level, and also to document the learning so that this process will be able to run into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My pleasure to the next panelist, Joyce Kinabo from Sokoine University in Tanzania. So the floor is yours, Joyce.
Thank you very much, Emo. And it's a great honor for me to be associated with this gathering. And I thank the organizers for the opportunity to be here. I think my colleagues have said it all. What I would like to probably summarize some of the issues that have been raised is that, yes, we need to link up research, decision makers, other stakeholders. But again, we need to understand in the area of research or academia, what are the kind of decisions that need to be made in various countries? Or what do decision makers in Africa require in order to make decision for nutrition? I think this should be the guiding question for all our discussion later on. In that case, it means that we need also to build capacity of decision makers or implementers through the SUN movement as to the way to ask the kind of questions that they want answers for. So this is research need capacity for policymakers and other actors in the field. In that case, I think we need to strengthen their capacity to request for evidence in respect of a certain decision and ability to fund it. So this issue of articulation of questions and issues for evidence, I think is very critical. But again, I think my colleagues have mentioned is lack of contextualized research agenda in various countries in the SUN movement. So we need to address key nutritional problems, provide answers and evidence to support appropriate decision making and implementation of nutrition activities at scale. but we need to draw a contextualized research agenda to address nutrition problems in countries. So if we are able to do that in various countries, then we'll be able to see what exactly needs to be done. Another issue is about lack of dedicated funding for nutrition research. This is coming out now and again. And we think that if we want to get answers, we must be ready to support the process of generating evidence. So it requires a strong will and understanding of the importance of science and evidence-based decision making. This is very important. But also we need to enhance capacity of researchers. I think it has been mentioned now and again here, to articulate the evidence for relevance and application for decision making. We know if we want to write a journal manuscript, we have guidelines for that. So you follow that format to get the information published. But for decision makers, for policymakers, we don't have such a format. I think there will be a need to develop a format that will be used to convey the information that we generate through research. Another issue is about transparency, information sharing, and engagements. I think we need a proper mechanism for this. If I can draw an example here, at the beginning of the outbreak of Ebola, the president of the US approached the CDC for answers, but again, he provided funding to generate the evidence. So we need to get to that level of engagement where decision makers, implementers would come forward to researchers and provide the necessary resources for researchers to generate the information and the evidence that is needed. Like now we have statements like, or hypotheses about nutrition sensitive or nutrition specific interventions, but these have not been tested. So we don't know really how specific or how sensitive these interventions are. And that's where we see researchers and academia very important to provide the information. We also need to understand and describe the science behind the community of practices that we are generating now and other community practices in addressing nutrition challenges so that we can develop well-tested standard procedures, processes, and technologies that can be scaled up. You know, determination of glucose in blood is a standard procedure. So we need to get to that level where we can have standard procedures, processes that can be scaled up, but in an adapted, contextualized way. And that's what the academia, professionals, and research communities can offer in the SUN movement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, thank you all for panelists. I'm going to move down, and I'm looking for solution, ideas. I think we have heard, yes, we have heard many. So before the floor is open, there's one person that I want to get this to hear, because he's the person who sparked ideas to have this roundtable. Then I will come to each of you. I would like to hear solution, innovation, out of the box, practical thinking that we can move forward. I think we have a lot of issues. So Hans-Christoph, you have been instrumental from the beginning to get this ongoing. It's your passion. So I'm going to give you the first voice from the floor to reflect.
Eamon, thank you very much. So having listened to the panelists, I have the impression that we have already found one answer. We have to integrate science more into the SUN movement. But one question remains, and that's the essential question: how? So what do we need to set up? Is it just a further network of the SUN movement, a science network? or do we rather need a kind of partnership in the countries? So let's call them perhaps innovation partnerships, comprising the political level, the administration of a country, the academia, but also civil society, starting from the farmer and ending up with the consumer, in order to develop what has been asked for, a common vision and language, and to define a research agenda according to the local needs, and then to develop mechanisms and platforms also for interaction across countries and for providing evidence, and also for being transparent and able to disseminate the results. So that is the question which still for me is in the room, and I would like to hear from the panelists but also from all of you in order to get some idea on the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've been instructed that this is a webcast session and they cannot see me if I walk downstairs to see you. So I do hope that they get to hear that. So let me, first of all, NK, you have been with the country, so we'll give you that, and then I would come back to this gentleman, the country, and solution, please. If that is one of the things we want to hear. NK?
Yeah. Thank you, Emon. Well, Emon mentioned all relevant points, and the panelists have also highlighted almost all the points. I'm currently an academician, but I have also been involved for a substantial number of years at the highest policy-making body. So I have 3 points to mention. Problem with the academia, second, scalability, third, sustainability. Vandana very correctly mentioned about policy briefs of 2 pages. Unfortunately, the academia doesn't know how to prepare a policy brief. So we, people from the academia who are conversant with preparing policy briefs, could help the academia in preparing policy briefs. Mm-hmm. In general, what the politicians or the decision makers are looking for is what is the situation, what needs to be done, why it needs to be done, and most importantly, how it has to be done, and who are the actors to be involved, and in not more than 2 pages, very rightly mentioned by Vanna. Second aspect is about scalability. What I have observed that many a times is just a promising practice or just anecdotal evidence, and it's hyped as something which is a great good practice or a best practice. So the academia should get involved, or rather could be involved, in making an assessment how scalable is this particular practice. Is it simply a promising practice, or is it a model, good practice, or it has been established as a best practice? Mm-hmm. So that's the role of academia. The third point is about sustainability. What I have observed, that the moment an external catalytic agent is out, the whole thing collapses. So maybe the academia could also suggest how could anything be sustainable. And once the process is on, maybe the academia could be involved in mentoring. Mm-hmm. So these are certain points which I thought are relevant. Thank you.
Quite challenging, isn't it? Yes. And then, all right, we would...
Merci beaucoup. Je suis Aoutou Kofi.
Thank you very much. I'm Atou Kofi from Côte d'Ivoire, the Sun focal point within the cabinet of our Prime Minister. Before we came here, we organized a workshop dedicated to recobbling our national strategic plan on nutrition. And during this workshop, I was coming out with an idea that I'd like to repeat here. My personal expectation as a focal point is, how do we make a very serious issue like nutrition, a popular issue, something which is accessible to one and all. And I would like to hammer this point home, because I believe that the scientific and other academic worlds should be able to help us in this job of popularization. We locally do have experiences of partnership and collaboration with the scientific world. For example, our Pediatrics Association is regularly consulted during the nutrition program activities. It's tapped for its input. But we'd like to go one step further. Instead of just this isolated instance of partnership, to rather put together and define a much broader platform, because the scientific and academic worlds are fairly broad-ranging, very diversified, and they all contribute very importantly, of course, to nutrition, the quality thereof. So we believe that to start off with, it's necessary to define a common vision between the decision makers and the scientific and academic representatives. And there, everyone will know what their roles are. And then we'll have to define the expectations as well as the constraints which are specific to each and every one of the participants. So I'd like to recall that we have experimented similarly in another field a couple of years ago between the economic and the social fields in the general framework of development policies. And we did manage to put together a policy, a platform, so as to enable us to define policies jointly. The scientific researchers would do their work in their corner, but then they would have to come up with a paper that could be used, tapped into by the decision maker. And I think that's how we should proceed here as well in the field of nutrition. So I think that we have to define and put together protocols of cooperation amongst the stakeholders. Thank you very much.
In light of time, I really would like to perhaps just to ask you to be as concise to the point as you can. So I'm going to go to some of the gender, and then we'll move between the two sides of that. So you have your hands up. So please, the lady right there. Can you put your hand up, please? And okay, and then we'll come back to this point, and then we'll get the response from other outside of the country too.
Okay, so,
Please.
yeah, science means knowledge, and I think one area, science means knowledge, and I think one of the areas that could be exploited very much is knowledge, local knowledge, because somebody mentioned contextualized information to answer the question. So looking at what practices have worked in the past that are sustainable, that could be scaled up from knowledge that has existed over time within the communities, because we were talking about looking at getting down to the villages, because in those villages there's some existing knowledge. So academia could help to document what has worked and try to see how that can be scaled up.
I just wanted to mention that academia, academic community in a country is an opportunity, and politicians should learn to go to the academy. And the academic community has the strong point of having its own role and sustainable development and evolution. And these people are working already on issues. And the first step, according to me, is to go into the researches already conducted in the life sciences, in the social sciences, because these people have the duty of relevance of their research. And there are wealth of knowledge already there. The first step, according to me, is to go and read what knowledges are there before trying to bridge, communication between the two. If we are blaming the academia of not having the right speeches to the politicians, I think we are hitting the wrong issue.
Okay, so we'll do one there, and then we'll come to you, John. I know you have your hands up, but now, one of the things, we have heard about platform, we have heard about learning across, sharing experiences. What others that are different that you can bring on? Now, this is where I would like to add on to that. Please.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Je m'appelle Mamad.
Thank you very much. I'm from Chad. Mr. Mamad Ichu is my name. I have three concerns on the policy briefs that have been referred to. Scientific researchers publish to advance their careers, but policy briefs don't really have much impact on that. So that's one reason why researchers don't work along those lines. So you have to see how you can enhance the value of these publications, which are called policy briefs. We have nothing against academic research, but it has to be applied. And the experienced difficulties encountered during the implementation of certain projects come back to research data. And that, if that is better refined, the feedback, I think that would be enhancing both for the researchers, the scientists, as well as for the good of the project. Last comment, the tools used in evaluation, when you take this SMART, SQUEAK, etc., these are not highly developed in universities. So universities can't really go that way. Very often, the nutrition type experts should be trained to use these tools, but they're not, unfortunately, very often. And so there's a failed linkage with possible partners because of their lack of qualifications in handling this tool. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll be very brief. My name is Emosla, and I'm with the Ghana Sun Academic Platform. I couldn't agree more with the previous speaker, who indicated that we probably will be hitting the wrong button if we feel that academics are not capable of producing documents that are useful to politicians or policymakers. And the solution to addressing that particular problem, I think, would come from the academics themselves. It is not that academics don't know how to produce policy briefs. It is because they probably are not very useful to them. And why do I say that? In certain institutions, there are weights attached to outputs that are produced by academics. And so the weight that is attached to an academic article will not be the same as the weight attached to a policy brief in terms of producing documents for promotion. I have sat in meetings in the universities, and these things are now being considered, such that a weight that is attached to policy brief could be equivalent to a weight attached to an academic article. And if that is done, you would have these same academics producing in large quantities policy briefs as they do for academic articles. So the solution can come from the academics.
Thank you very much. Behind, I think you have your hand up for a long time. And then I want to hear something more different ways that you can bring on board. So my issue would be, what would be the best thing to do, a mechanism that we can move forward for the Sun movement? So how do you see it? please be concise. We are running.
Madam Chair, you are giving me a very difficult to say the best way to do it. I don't know, but I'm going to give an example that we have used in Uganda. My name is Baguma. Now I chair the Civil Society Coalition on Nutrition, but I'm a journalist who was focusing on politics. And I confronted this problem because I found that the politicians and the scientists, and I think science is political but non-partisan. I think science is politics. Now, the scientists, the academia, and the politicians actually know each other at that level. They went to the same schools, and the Association of Surgeons of Uganda was struggling with this problem. And when they asked me, I said, why don't we have a meeting? And that's my recommendation. Informal, regular sessions of discussion between the policy people and the politicians and these people. When we entered the room, these politicians were actually patients of these surgeons. And I became irrelevant as a facilitator because they started their conversations. I think that can be done, and they are friends, and they know each other very well.
Okay. All right. Okay, so are we doing on time? And I think that we have probably about 5 more minutes to go. So this has to be a more random choice. But I'm going to try and be as inclusive as possible. So bear with me. I like to swing and hear a few things from certain person who has done a lot with the country and then go back to the country. So Beyond, and then we'll get Ibu Nina from Indonesia, and then we'll come back this way, okay? So, yes. And I know we have more people who want it, which is good, but we'll try. Please, Beyond, be as concise as you can. Thank you.
I will try, and thank you very much, Simon, and thanks for all the contributions. I think, number one, I think we are getting where we need to be, that scaling up of nutrition is not a question of scaling up a set of nutrition intervention. It has to be scaling up of capacity to manage problems of malnutrition. And if you agree on that, all these things make perfect sense. Of course, if you're talking about scaling up of capacity, we have to include, make sure that they are there, the agencies, the institutions who are in the forefront of building capacity, developing capacity, adapting capacity. And that includes those who are at the cutting edge of nutrition knowledge. And to me, it includes both those working with the theories, the academicians, as well as those who works with the practice, what works on the ground. And to me, that actually means that I prefer to call it the technical network rather than the academic network or the scientific networks, because both the practitioners and the researchers who should be part of that capacity building network. Mm-hmm. And the good thing is that if we agree that they, of course, need their own space and place in the Sun movement, these networks needs to be established, and with special emphasis on national level. And fortunately, in most countries where I visited, there is already a society of nutrition scientists or nutrition practitioners. So I think that can be very quickly done if you want something quick. Let's agree this is what needs to be there, and the emphasis should be at country level, and make sure that to the extent possible where we have nutrition societies, we should immediately invite them to participate. Very simple, and then also the whole community of practice and other things will work out. We have a group in countries who can help to advise their politicians and decision makers. I was in Rome, I heard that this breastfeeding code is funny, whatever, can explain what is all behind it. Somebody else goes to another meeting and here we should stop vitamin A supplementation. They can ask the local capacities really what applies to our country, and it will be a great help. Can I just say that I'm very proud and happy to also help Professor Joyce to organize the next African Nutrition Conference in May next year. Take note. Let's make that a good meeting of the nutrition
Yes.
Sun networks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let's hear from Ibu Nina in Indonesia, where the sun progress is getting stronger. Please.
Thank you. I would like to share our experiences in Indonesia, how we work with the academia. So, scientific evidence of our program and policies is mandatory. Therefore, we work with the academia in developing the SUN platform. And up to now, we are already able to establish what we call the Scientific Advisory Committee to help the government and the network in implementing the SUN movement. And we are also bringing the academia to work with us in all of the working groups that we established. So this is perhaps I could share with other countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so, okay.
Thank you.
We have a few more voices to be heard. You have your hand up for some time, so let's start with you, the lady, and then I'll come back this way. Okay? Right. So.
Oui, je suis Matidiane du Sénégal. Je voudrais partager un peu les...
From Senegal, I should like to share a bit my experience we have had with universities. In Senegal, for the Ministry of Health, the Subdivision on Health, Nutrition, and also CLM, we worked with universities for the purpose of research. We invite university to go ahead with research, and then we share the results. And we implement also a number of activities along with the universities so that these things be done in the field, because within the ministry we have a problem with human resources, of course. But in our technical committees, work with the university, for example, social pediatrics, the university, through the various departments. This is what I wanted to share with you.
I really think that we have already heard so many things about a platform where we can bring them together. But the main thing about it is still, there's still needs to be bridged, and also more likely, how do we be able to, and I like the word, scaling up capacity on both sides and maybe able to share. I really think that it's helpful to have a platform in country. There's no doubt about it. That's not guarantee. That's not guarantee that that is going to be impact unless we do really put in a lot of efforts to support and strengthening both sides. There has to be a win-win. People will be there only when they see that they can contribute. And that, I think, from the two sides seems to be coming together. So I know we have to, I'm so sorry, we have to close the session, but it doesn't mean that we won't hear from you. I want to say and point to that will be efforts to get back to you, to get more ideas, and to be able to bring those in the forefront. We seem to be in thinking that from the beginning, the network of global that has civil society, donors, business, and at the moment UN system. And lots of people want to bring one more. But at this point in time, it seems to me that what matters most is what works in the country. How do you make it fit? We can give you fabric. You have to cut it And this is why science, academia, and professionals were not in the same league as what we have, the global network, but to tailor and cater, how do we strengthen that? It's still, to me, we are providing some issues, but not yet, I think, the mechanism of how those two can really walk along the way. This is a beginning, though. We will need to keep on and compile more practice and look into where things work. I appreciate all the comments being made because I think that this is where we start to see the willingness to listen, the willingness to share. And that is how, from the point of view, science people felt they were left out altogether from the Sun movement. And they felt very much that they should be able to contribute. Now, I think the other things we need to do is when we do scientific forum, we have to think of policymakers too, bring space, make them a part of, rather than saying that this is for science, we're going to talk among ourselves. There would be that section. There should be something that has a shared space. Seems like people also want to say, to do the common language, we need to understand each other. Why scientific knowledge on the basic science is important, there is also a gap of implementation science, the knowledge of how things would work. Nobody wants to put money into it because most of the publication put on at the moment, publication is for basic knowledge. It's not to say basic knowledge is not important, but it's that we neglect a certain part, and at the moment we are seeing the consequences. Bringing them together, as you can see, at the regional forum, and I must say, in many countries where you want capacity being built, maybe we should look region, we should look sub-region, we should try not to try to make everything work right overnight. It seems to me that many of you have highlighted all those issues that are important. I can't make it all summaries of all this knowledge that we have right now, but that will be available. And I think in the afternoon, there will be a report back. I want to first say that this is to say thank you to all the panelists who has been very instrumental, to all of you, and to two persons in particular in the audience, Patrick and Fiona, for helping out with all the preparation, and Hans Christoph for initiating that this should be done. The time is right for it. And for all of you who believe that this is an important issue, please keep that in your thoughts when you go back to the country. Also, as to how we can make science and sun being able to walk together towards this in the coming years. And I do hope we would have a sequel of what you have been talking about. There has been initiative, the network in countries and in the region. So we want to hear more. And community of practice, I think the science work well with the community of practice. Don't forget they have the role, be able to welcome. And on the science side, welcome the policymakers. I would like to also suggest learning route for both of this. Maybe we should start to bring those two worlds together. Maybe we should start letting them see the other side of the coin. So that would be something to think about as well. And coming from the floor, appreciate it. So thank you very much for all the time and inputs. I'm so sorry, I apologize for not able to accommodate every needs to contribute here, but this is not the end. We will make sure your voice are being heard and your comments to come on board. Please keep tuned to the website of the Sun. We will keep you abreast of what is going on and would appreciate all the ideas. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you so much.